When you think of clubs that have a clear identity in European football, certainly AFC Ajax has to be one of the clubs that comes to mind. 4-3-3, attacking football, with diamond after diamond coming through their academy and a laundry list of top players from Dutch football history passing through their ranks. But in the last couple of years, a controversy behind the scenes that later became public has caused a ripple effect that has led to where we are today. Ajax near the bottom of the Eredivisie, playing football that is completely unrecognizable, getting pummeled by their fiercest rivals, intentionally getting the match abandoned, rioting outside of the stadium, and then a select few hooligans breaking into the stadium.
Oh no! Oh,
I'm not sure that many people had this on their 2023-24 season bingo card, as Ajax's identity has slowly been chipped away.
Last season was shit. This season is shit. We're seeing decisions being made that are not football related.
So what's happened? How did we get to this point where Ajax is currently imploding? What's up everyone, and thank you for joining me. My name is Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV. Subscribe if you're new, and welcome back to our returning subscribers. Today, as you can see here, I will be joined by Papimento to break down the timeline of Ajax crumbling these days and how it all started, the frustrations that led to some hooligans breaking into the stadium, and how they have also fallen from a sporting level as well. Make sure to check out Papimento and the rest of the guys from We Talk Ajax on YouTube for all of the Ajax coverage you've been wanting, but in English. Love those guys. Thanks again for your help, but beyond that, let's get started. This is a complicated issue that wasn't started due to a single event. It's a culmination of many things. We gotta go back to the beginning here. AFC Ajax was founded in... I'm joking. I have another video that will inform you on that, but we're not doing that here because it's not necessary. But for the beginning of this, we have to go back to February of 2022 when Marc Overmars was ousted from Ajax due to sexual misconduct with female employees at the club, leaving his role as the director of football and thus ending a decade with Ajax as a director. It was a really poor look for Ajax, but they did the right thing in moving on from Overmars, who he himself admitted that he had stepped over the line. But with a director like Overmars on the way out, who did Ajax bring in to fill that role?
Van der Sar took over. With his CEO job, he took over as well the Marc Overmars job. But as fans, we thought it would only be like the 6 months, you know, the remainder of the season. But that didn't happen either. They said that Van der Sar could do it with the help of Gerry Hamstra, that was youth head scouting at that time. He would assist Van der Sar, and they added Huntelaar to the team, which didn't have any experience, but more as a trainee to learn on the go and get the experience in. That didn't work out at all.
So with what was supposed to just be a phase without a director of football, suddenly became a season and a half without one. A supervisory board was put into place to help out Edwin van der Sar, who was previously the CEO of the club, but also took on the director of football roles as mentioned, including recruitment, which last summer, the summer of 2022, didn't go very well.
Our technical team didn't do well in attracting the right kind of players. Most of the players that we attracted last transfer window are already gone, so none of them are still with us.
On top of that, you had Alfred Schreuder as the head coach, a guy who was previously an assistant and managed one season for Club Brugge. Fair to say that Ajax is a massive step up from Club Brugge, as Schreuder didn't even last the season. With Ajax struggling in 5th after 6 consecutive draws, Schreuder was let go, with Heitinga taking his place as a caretaker for the remainder of the season. He actually did well for a time, Heitinga that is, but Ajax eventually settled in 3rd, having to watch their hated rivals Feyenoord win the league. So let's count the grievances so far. You lose Overmars, who for all of his own personal issues and bad behavior was brilliant at his job as a director of football. He's never really replaced. You have a coach that nobody is convinced by in Schreuder. You gotta watch Feyenoord win things. And then on top of that,
we didn't have a sporting director, but we also lost our CEO. So there was no structure in the technical team. So then your focus goes a little bit to the supervisory board. They're assigning the sporting director. They're assigning the new CEO. But every time you hear from them, it's not up to us to determine these strategies. No, it's up to the technical team. But you're assigning the technical team. So shouldn't you have a little bit of control of what's happening with your technical team?
No one wanted to take accountability at all. It was just it's not our fault, it's their fault kind of thing. Always nice when your club is caught up in that kind of thing, eh? So now we know the origins of some of the frustrations that Ajax supporters have had over the last year and a half or so. As noted, one of the biggest reasons for discontent, or at least the one that started all of these branches of frustrations, would be the loss of their director of football. Not just that, but the lack of a genuine replacement after him, which dragged Van der Sar into that role, the advisory board, bringing on Schreuder, and the poor execution of signings that have all since left the club. In essence, last season felt like one massive waste of time. But in April of 2023, their prayers were answered. Somewhat, at least, as a new director of football was announced. Spoiler alert, the new director of football is already their former director of football. But when Mislintat was signed, there was some optimism, and rightfully so. Now, of course, director of football is a different role from the one that probably first brought Sven Mislintat's name into your brain. While he later had a director of football role at Stuttgart, he made a name for himself in a different role at both Arsenal and Dortmund. While he was with BVB, he was a well-regarded scout, in fact, the chief scout at the club, who was credited with bringing in the likes of Lewandowski, Pulisic, Kagawa, Aubameyang, Ousmane Dembele, and on the list goes. Thus earning the nickname Diamond Eye, which sounds like a Bond villain nickname, but anyway, he had an incredible knack for unearthing these often overlooked players that would go on to be world beaters much of the time.
Players like that, that's what you want to see, and that made a lot of Ajax fans like, okay, we finally have a sporting director, we finally are going to get some technical, good quality players, because after last season, we didn't want to have a repeat this season. We're missing out on Champions League, we're in the Europa League. Sven had to do so much dirty work. I feel a little bit he was scapegoated, to be honest. You know, he had to restructure the salaries at Ajax. We're not playing Champions League anymore. He had to deal with Tadic leaving, Klaassen leaving, all the leaders within the team, Timber, Alvarez, Kudus. So all these players left this transfer window, and he had to set up a whole new team. If you ask me, he didn't get enough chances to do so. It's a very short window just to set up a whole team and make it work from the get-go.
A very, very short window, as I'll remind you guys now. Sven only took over the director of football role at the beginning of April 2023, and he's already gone. How does this make sense? Well, Ajax is a club with a very, very clear identity. The style of football they play, how they like to be on the front foot, even the formation that they play with is so ingrained within the club that any sort of deviation from what makes them Ajax had better be successful, or else you're going to hear about it from the fans. It's here where Sven had a misstep that seems harsh from the outside, but it still contributed to his fate.
Look, he made mistakes as well. Like, it's not, he doesn't go without fault, because if you think about it, people blame him, for instance, that we're known as Ajax to play a 4-3-3 system, right? Why didn't you buy a right winger? The players that he brought in might have the quality for a 3-5-2 system, but not for a 4-3-3 system. But you could still blame Sven for not bringing in a right winger and for signing Stein, a coach that doesn't have an experience with a big club, as his first choice coach.
So enter Maurice Stein. Who is this guy? Look, I'll be honest, I didn't know or have any sort of name recognition when it was announced that he was taking over at Ajax, because I watched some Eredivisie, but I certainly don't catch too many Sparta Rotterdam matches, which is where he joined Ajax from. Prior to that, he was with NEC Breda, Al Wada in Abu Dhabi, and many years spent with VVV Venlo.
All the Ajax fans watch Eredivisie, so for us, we've seen how he coaches, and our worst nightmare is coming true, because what we were worried about is that he wouldn't know how to play the attacking football Ajax likes to play. We play high up, dominant, possession-based football, pressing the opponent on their half, right? He's used to teams that sit back, low block, play counter. Is that the kind of coach that you should be hiring for an Ajax? He doesn't have the experience and as a big coach. So I think that was very risky from Sven. That was the biggest part of sealing his faith, I think.
Papimento's knowledge really coming in clutch here. But of course, after hearing that and how Stein seems as though he was never really a fit for Ajax, that caused me to wonder. If you had to sort of jump into Sven's brain right now, or maybe he even stated it publicly, but what do you think sort of led him to choosing Stein as the next manager for Ajax?
He said it because he's an overperformer. Well, he's not overperforming at Ajax. that was...
If that's sort of the main characteristic you're looking for, I don't know. It's easy to fall flat quickly. So not only is Steijn a coach that doesn't fit with Ajax stylistically, but the results aren't there either. Like I mentioned earlier, these wholesale changes to the shape and the tactics aren't exactly welcome at a club like Ajax, where their identity is so deeply ingrained into their club. However, I think it's safe to say that people are welcome to change so long as it's a positive one. People can ultimately stomach these kinds of changes so long as they are bringing success to the club, so long as there are changes for the better. But that hasn't been the case yet at Ajax, as Stein's version of the club has seen them win just twice in 8 attempts, a 25% win rate. And when pressed for what's going wrong, the answers he has given to the media and by extension to the supporters have been a bit underwhelming or unbefitting of the sort of expectation that Ajax supporters have of their manager.
Like Erik ten Hag, the Pep Guardiolas, the things like that. For us, those are guys that are constantly 24/7 busy with their job, right? They're very precise in everything. The execution should be perfect. Then you go from Ten Hag to a Schreuder and a Steijn that are more talking. We like to talk about the tactical aspect of the game and stuff like that, and they're talking about more of the we made individual mistakes, we didn't fight hard enough. Those are not the things that the Ajax fans want to hear. They want your explanation of the tactical side of things and why you think we're not winning, why it's not working, what you expect to do differently. This is something that he's not been given.
These bad results under Steijn were punctuated with an absolute explanation point on the weekend of September 23rd, which provided the first klassieker of the season between heated rivals Ajax and Feyenoord. Feyenoord came into this match as the defending champions, having won the Eredivisie last season, and rightfully so. And they are growing quite the interesting sporting project under manager Arne Slot. Not only are they doing well in the Netherlands, but they kicked off their Champions League campaign with a victory as well. All of this to the dismay of Ajax supporters, of course. Now, to fully understand just how big the rivalry between Ajax and Feyenoord is, I did make a Roots of the Rivalry video explaining the history of said rivalry and why away fans are not permitted for this fixture. So it's important to keep this in mind. Playing at the Johan Cruyff Arena this past weekend, by the time the clock had struck 18 minutes, Feyenoord's Santiago Jimenez had already bagged a brace, with his side leading 2-0 away to Ajax. After 37 minutes, Igor Paixão made it 3-0. On the other side of the half, in the 56th minute, the match was abandoned. Why is that? It was purposely abandoned, as there is a rule in Dutch football where if a firework is thrown onto the pitch, the match is stopped. If it happens a second time, the match will be abandoned. And this is not some espionage or anything from Feyenoord supporters to go undercover to make Ajax look bad, as you will remember from a moment ago that there are no away supporters allowed at these matches due to terrible events in the past. So regarding the flares thrown on the pitch as Ajax were losing 3-0 and the rules surrounding this,
supporters know this, and they saw that we were getting trashed by Feyenoord. So they threw things to not have to see this game, or maybe they think that we play it later on and we might be in a bitter state or something like that. But yeah, let me just say that this is wrong. As a true supporter, just take that shame, take that hit as hard as you can, because I do think that it's just shambles what Ajax is showing at the moment. But that's after the game, right? At the game, you're supporting your team, and this is not something Ajax fans should be doing. I thought our club was a little bit further than this, like in the class aspect of things.
And it got worse from there, as following the match being abandoned and supporters sent packing, a select few of the more angry and extremist Ajax supporters actually broke back into the stadium following some ugly scenes outside of it. It was a mess, a complete mess, that Maurice Steijn described as, quote, a jet black day.
Yeah, we're having a dip, and it's a big dip, but not to the turn that you have to go and do this. I think this is just too much. I will never accept this, but I understand their anger.
The next day, September 24th, Sven Mislintat was given his marching orders with the reasoning from interim CEO of Ajax, Jan van Halst, being, quote, Several attempts to restore broad support have not led to the desired outcome. This leads to unrest in and around the club, also due to the disappointing results. Sven has put in tremendous effort for Ajax in recent months, for which we are grateful. It is now in Ajax's best interest to move on with joined forces and find its way back to sporting success. So getting rid of Mislintat, while it may be seen as a bit harsh, many Ajax supporters aren't overly emotional about him leaving the club as he has. Sure, they can give him some benefit of the doubt in that he had a very big and difficult job on his hands, and very short amount of time to make genuine change. But what's even more frustrating is the supervisory board and how untouchable they are at the moment.
Last season was shit. This season is shit. We're seeing decisions being made that are not football related, or even if me at my company would take those decisions, I would be fired. So, and there's no repercussion for the things that are happening at the moment at the supervisory board. And I think that's where the biggest frustration comes from.
So where do you go from here? There is turmoil on the pitch with a coach who, as harsh as it sounds, is currently failing at his job, failing to play in the Ajax style and failing to get results in his own style. With everything that has happened behind the scenes at Ajax, coupled with a manager who is seemingly not a great fit for them, and with a supervisory board that is in charge of making decisions but simultaneously has no repercussions when things go wrong, you can see the frustration for Ajax supporters. There is a bit of a feeling of losing their identity on all levels at the moment, which is especially difficult for a club whose identity, as we've said so many times, is so clear and ever present throughout their history. And so, what's next for them? How do they bring themselves back from the brink here? A new director of football would be a great start. And at the moment,
what everybody's hoping and what the rumors are suggesting is maybe Louis van Gaal coming back as a technical director for a short amount of time. He knows the Ajax way. He was an Ajax coach. He understands the Ajax system, the Ajax way of play, the philosophy of Johan Cruyff. And he has a huge network, right? That could only benefit us, I think. Guy like that. And he is an alpha male, let me say it like that. Like, he is the kind of person that would tell the supervisory board, shut the hell up. We need the money now. This team needs quality. We're not going to wait till people are sold. You need also people with a little bit of cojones there. Let's say it like that, Adrian. And this is exactly what he can bring us. He it's not like me going to the supervisory board. No, it's Louis van Gaal going to the supervisory board, and he can get things done, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. It all sounds great on paper, but only time will tell what will happen. Van Gaal would be a great first step towards Ajax becoming Ajax again, but you can't take anything for granted, so we'll have to wait and see. Regardless, I know I personally will be watching Ajax very closely this season, as this is an unexpected outcome. I really didn't think that after last season's problems, they would have a repeat this season, going even worse so far. I want to thank Papimento and We Talk Ajax once again for their help in making this video. Be sure to check those guys out for more coverage of Ajax in English. Other than that, I thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great day. Ciao.